All right, so for our second react we will be doing today, we're going to be watching Choy's video. Choy is somebody we've watched for a very, very long time. One of the first people we ever reacted to. Makes very, very good videos. When they make super informative stuff, I usually like it a lot. I get very, very invested. It's usually when Choy makes takes. We kind of don't see eye to eye on a lot of our takes. But that doesn't make the videos any less interesting because then we get to have a healthy discussion about what would be best. So either way, it's great. Either way, though, speaking of either way, you should still hit that link that just showed up in the fish chat above my head. Or if you're in the YouTube in the future, it'll be down in the description below to make sure you support the official release of the video, or else you're a freeloader and I hate you. But other than that, let's talk about the terrible map design in Dead by Daylight, which is, like I said, very consistently inconsistent. It seems like their philosophy when it comes to designing maps just kind of like changes with the wind, and sometimes they make really, really strong killer maps, sometimes they make really strong survivor maps, sometimes they make maps that are bad for both sides, sometimes there's just a lot of clutter, sometimes the collision is terrible, and I say sometimes as a joke because the collision is terrible on every map in Dead by Daylight, even when they do passes to adjust it and make it better. Like, it just doesn't seem like there's any consistent philosophy when it comes to map design, and it really, really, really shows. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about, or see what Choy has to say about it.
No secret that Dead by Daylight is having some seriously concerning numbers when it comes to the recent chapter releases of huge licenses like Chucky and Alien.
No, I said this is what was said in the Coconut video. It's like seriously huge licenses. These guys haven't had good movies in like 30 years. Alien's even longer. I don't get where this like huge license thing comes from. Like, these guys haven't had good movies in like 30 years. Chucky had a good TV show. But these guys haven't had a hit film that's like reviewed well in 30 years period or more. So what are you talking about that these are the biggest licenses they've ever gotten? Like if we got Halloween in 2024, yeah, I would agree with you, right? But these guys haven't had good movies in a very, very long time. Like they're don't get me wrong, they're big pillars of the horror genre in general. But they're very old. they're old. Last one for Chucky was like Child's Play 2. The rest of them got kind of like funny, zany, and very campy, which is fine, but it's not like, you know, a movie drops in the theater and you're like, we gotta go see that. It's really, really good. Alien's been putting out very, very meh films for ever since Aliens in 86, I believe is the release date, or the release year for that. They've been putting out very mixed reviewed films for the entire, like literally for 30 years since the point, since Aliens released. So like, I don't know, like, I feel like once again, we're in between chapters and DBD content creators are looking for something to like, hey, that's a bad sign that the game is dying and let's make a stink about it. It's like, I don't know. So as somebody who's actually, you know, into these franchises, I know they haven't put out a good film in a really long time. So they haven't been in the public light for a really long time, or at least in a like super prevalent way. Yo, Rocky, thanks so much for the 34 months, friend. I very much appreciate that, bud. Hopefully you're doing well today. Like for a perfect example, it's like Godzilla. Godzilla just put out -1, and everybody's like, "Hey, bro, you need to go see -1 like right now." And it's on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like it was like at 100 for like a month straight, and it's still like 98, something like that. It's super high. It's winning awards literally everywhere. It is like literally a must-see movie. Like that franchise is hot, very, very hot. But neither of these franchises have put out a banger in a really, really long time. Really, really long time. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good way to put it. You know, I feel like the last time Alien had a really, really prominent like place in pop culture like recently was with Alien Isolation, and that was 10 years ago. That was a decade ago. That was a long time ago. So like, I think this is vastly overstated, and the point of vastly overstating it is to make DBD look bad, because it's time to kick DBD in the shin because we're in between mid-chapters or we're in between chapters and we're bored. Prometheus 2012, 13? Maybe? It was like It was like when it was like when I was like a teenager, like either like the end of high school or like right after high school for me, I think. Yeah, it's like 2012. I was right. Hey, let's go. Yeah, these franchises have put out like an objectively good piece of media that everybody was excited for in a really long time. So I am not surprised they didn't do fairly well.
Completely flopping or even dropping players with their release. These are massively iconic and requested characters that a few years back could have legitimately doubled the player base of DBD, but somehow there was almost no hype for these chapters within the community and they didn't even get leaked ahead of time. So what exactly is wrong with modern DBD? Now, I'm guessing a lot of you just immediately thought skill-based matchmaking, and you are not wrong, but I want to get more specific and take a deeper look at the series of events that got DBD to this point where the player base just generally seems less and less interested in the game. Now, my claim is that,
like I said, it's I don't know how much of it's necessarily truthful. It's just kind of just like a means to an end to complain about the game some more. It's just a means to an end to complain about the game more. Like, see, game's failing. See, look. It makes sense to me as somebody who like likes horror outside of Dead by Daylight. Like, it makes sense to me.
Map design is the catalyst for most of DBD's current issues and has led to, I wouldn't say killing the game, as that's a bit too dramatic, but I will say it could be the beginning of the end. It's
remember, I made this video. It's like every time we're in between chapters, DBD content creators get bored and they're just like, well, the game's dying. Let's panic. Everybody panic. The game is dying. Everything's terrible. This perk OP. What are we gonna freak out about? Because it's not the new chapter because we don't have one for a while. Like it's a consistent cycle, man. It really is. Like maps are bad, don't get me wrong. But like the fact that we even have to be like, whoa, it's not actually killing the game. Like Doomer's gonna doom. Literally, Doomer's gonna doom.
that much of a problem. So let's take a warm look back to see how many problems terrible map design is truly responsible for. Basically, since the beginning, behavior has never really understood the fundamentals of creating.
My journey as a content creator was so much easier when I was a crybaby entitled killer main with no free thoughts in my brain. I was not a free thinker. Because everybody just wants to whine and complain and bitch. That's all they want to do. So, but like, hey, I got the views were easier. Subs were easier. You know why? Because people just, misery loves company. People do love complaining. So.
A well-balanced map. A map that can be played by both sides and feel fair. It almost feels like they just try random things to see how they work rather than having any kind of concrete idea.
Yep, there's no philosophy to it.
Trying to learn from past mistakes.
No philosophy to it.
This is especially noticeable when they remake maps and they're still terribly balanced. Take for instance,
Haddonfield went from being the balanced aggressively in the survivor side and one of the most lamented maps on the killer side to just being one of the most lamented maps on both sides. They just massacred that poor map. Aesthetically, it's really cool, but like from a gameplay perspective, they just tore apart that map. Map is most fair, probably just normal Cold Tower. A lot of the McMillan maps are fair. Groaning Storehouse, not. Suffolk Pit, not really, but like a lot of the variations of those are fine now. Like now that we have alternate variations of those, I think a lot of the variations are pretty fairly balanced. Like Alt Ironworks, Alt Groaning, like those maps are fine. Like a lot of the alternative maps they made for Mac are pretty good. So.
The game. The reworked version is just filled with god palettes. That's the whole map. It genuinely feels like the design
Reworked Uri is still terrible.
Let's try making a small map with an insane amount of save palettes and see.
Reworked Uri is funny because they took a map that was like so terrifyingly difficult and annoying to play on and only made it, yeah, literally, like you said, they only made it like 5% better. Only made it 5% better. They said, hey, we're cutting your foot off. And they said, oh, now we're no longer cutting your foot off. We're taking off all your toes. It's totally better, right? It's like, no, you're still taking off most of my foot. Stop it. Quit.
See what happens. And there's plenty of more examples of behavior taking badly designed
I think
maps.
that's a situation, Twisty. That's like a situation like Wraith. You know, like Wraith himself is not particularly a very obnoxious killer, but like the player base that plays him obnoxiously and they all play him that way. I feel that way about Mac maps. Like Mac maps for the most part are balanced besides like normal Groaning and like normal Ironworks, normal Suffo Pit. But like, I think it's just the way that the kind of person that wants to go to Macmillan is somebody who wants to sweat. So it just kind of ends up being a miserable experience for that reason instead.
And reworking them to be just as bad as the original, or in some cases even worse.
I don't know. Okay, hear me out. This I don't get, and this is I don't know if this makes me a hot take. I feel like how do people hate new RPD? Like, I get that it's not a particularly fun map to play on, but to say like this charge of it's worse, I don't get that. How is this worse than old RPD? Old RPD, that Twitter themselves, DBD Twitter themselves said was quite literally the largest map they have ever created. And I can see that with 3 floors and both the sides connected. I can see that. Old Boil Over up in the library. You guys remember that? That was fun. That was great. Remember when they put a hook up there to fix it and then the killer could just body block the hook and kill somebody for free? That was great. How can you say RPD is objectively in a worse state than it was before? How can you say that? Like, I feel like this is what I'm saying is like the doomers gotta doom is like when you start just like when you, it's okay to criticize the game, and we should criticize the game because that's how we keep the game healthy, as we just, you know, confront things that aren't the greatest about it to keep them changing things for the better. But you say just like wacky, just out of pocket, just absolutely untrue shit like this, it just makes me turn my brain off and not want to listen to you anymore. Like, how can you say that new RPD is a downgrade from old RPD? That is ridiculous to me. Absolutely ridiculous to me. I can't. You can say the map is still not fun to play on. You can say that. You cannot say it was objectively worse than the other one. Holy moly.
Some cases even worse. A new strategy of theirs seems to love the idea of putting random clutter all over the map to annoy basically everyone. Then when the community voices their complaints, there's a strange egotistical attitude from behavior when it comes to taking feedback about map issues from the community.
I mean, even RPD West is still like killer sided. Like both RPDs are killer sided now just because that middle area is so easy to defend as a choke point. It's essentially like Azerov's. Or any eye-shaped map like Sanctum. Like, it's really easy to patrol. And also, unlike Sanctum and other maps that are eye-shaped, it is an indoor map. So stealth killers that are usually worse have a little bit more wiggle room to perform a bit better. Not saying it's fun to play on, I'm just saying that, like, ideally, yes, it is. Both are killer sides still.
And it feels like behavior is just saying, you know, we're the developers, we know what we're doing, you are the players, stay in your lane. And it has gotten to the point where it's like, no, you don't know what you're doing, and at this point, I think you're too afraid to ask. That might be a little harsh, but it does seem true. So what does behavior do at this point? The player base is frustrated and tired of playing on not just badly balanced maps, but insultingly bad maps. Like, how does behavior generally not know what a god window is after all these years? All right.
I don't know why Mother's Dwelling got to keep its god window. I don't know how Garden of Joy's god window didn't get fixed when they looked at them. Like, I don't understand why we need god windows in 2024. Like, I do not understand why that's a thing. It is very, very bizarre. So,
So after all of these complaints, do they finally decide to balance their maps? Of course not. Instead, they come out with the Deus Ex Machina to all of their problems, the anti-loop killer. The first and most notable one that I would define as truly an anti-loop killer was Deathslinger, followed by Pyramid Head, Victor, Trickster, Nemesis, Pinhead. Even old characters like Doctor, Freddy, and Clown were being reworked to become true anti-loop killers. And to be honest, these killers weren't so annoying and had genuine counterplay in a lot of situations. But by time artists rolled around, the DBD community was pretty much burnt out on anti-loop killers. It wasn't that anti-loop killers were badly designed, it was that they all feel somewhat similar to play against. So
that's true. Huntress does just shoot over a lot of
intents and purposes, she was an M1 killer. Now, although she's the killer I find most fun to play in the game, the unfortunate truth is that the majority of the DBD community pretty much wrote her off as a trash killer with, you guessed it, no anti-loop. So the community sent the message to behavior that a killer with no anti-loop is worthless. So next we get
it's just like they kind of just can't survive in the modern era of DBD, because all your chases need to be really short, and you need to be getting downs and hooks so you can apply pain res, pop, all the meta slowdown. And if your character is slow to do that, you just don't survive. You just don't anymore. You know? You just don't. Like, you literally can't hack it. You can't play those characters consistently. I talked about this in my low tier ego video, is that like you can play low tiers that have little to no chase power or just a really, really bad chase power. But like, you are choosing to play somebody who by nature is super inefficient at the way DBD is played. And the only reason they got away with being the way they were is because people were still working on figuring out what was the way to play DBD the right way or efficiently. Now that most people know that, these characters can't hack it. They just can't. So you can't play, bottom 5, bottom 3 character in the game and then be mad that you're losing all the time, because between, this video about the map design and many other things in Dead by Daylight, you just can't hack it. You just can't compete. So it does not surprise me people acted that way.
Reg, easily one of the best themed killers ever added to DBD, but of course, he has anti-loop. Then finally we got Wesker, a movement-based killer like Blight, but without completely busted add-on. Who would have thought that a movement-based killer in a movement-based game would be so successful? So I'll be honest, I'm not really sure what the thought process was after Wesker. Maybe behavior just wanted to try something new, or it's possible they ran out of ideas to make new anti-loop killers. Either way, the anti-loop killer design was replaced with the anti-gameplay killer design.
Anti-gameplay, it's true, very true.
Really any mechanical skill involved. Starting with the Knight and Skull Merchant, instead of the killer always having a chance to get a hit at a loop, they were now guaranteed a hit on cooldown. And although they can be fun to play, and I truly appreciated the ambition of a killer like Knight.
I'm gonna make a whole video about this, but I will go into this video. Is that there's definitely been a push in like recent DBD design, and it has kind of manifested itself in many different ways over the course of DBD's history, but there's definitely been a more recent push, like with characters like Knight and Skull Merchant, to create a kind of a single player experience while playing Dead by Daylight, regardless of the fact that you are playing with other people. And I don't like that. I do not like that. I would much rather have DBD, if they ever want to do something like that, kind of branch out and do like a PvE mode, or just have you like bot mode matter for something. Don't make characters that, like we always talk about, fun at someone else's expense. Forcing that, I should be able to, boot up Day by Daylight, and despite the fact that it's a multiplayer experience, be able to play as if I'm playing by myself and just force people to be my little NPCs. That is miserable. Because people don't like to be made to be out to be NPCs. People don't like feeling like toys in somebody else's toy box. I want to be the one opening the toy box and playing with my toys, Like, it's like, there were kids like this. You knew them growing up. That, like, you would go to, like, the playground to play, like, kickball or, like, Foursquare or something, and they'd be, like, changing all the rules, and everything had to bend to their fun. Like, those kids were miserable. And that's like the kind of player that they're like appealing to, which is scary. Very, very scary. I don't know. It's just, real people should not be subjected to a single player experience. Real people should not be NPCs in someone else's experience. I hate that design direction.
AI minions, this design strategy is a nightmare for survivors to play against. The gameplay becomes so streamlined and static that it feels more like a boring co-op game rather than a competitive game. The next two killers, Singularity and Alien, weren't quite as offensive as their predecessors, but ultimately they suffer from the same anti-gameplay issue as them. The counterplay to Singularity are EMPs. If you don't have one or you don't manage them properly, you just die. Same thing with Alien. The counterplay are turrets. Otherwise, Xeno literally power creeps every other anti-loop killer in the game with all of their strengths but none of their weaknesses. The counterplay to which is again a turret that can be pretty much rendered useless with the right add-ons.
No, gosh, I hate this mentality. See, this is what I'm saying. Sometimes there's just really bad takes. And this is not just his bad take. This is a bad take of a lot of the community. I'm going to say it again. Just because the turret doesn't knock the Xenomorph out of the power does not mean the turret is fucking useless. Please do some research, investigate a little, and find out that the turrets are more useful as free body blocks in the middle of chases. Even if you are the only one that is placing turrets, please place a turret somewhere you plan to loop, and it acts as a free body block as if another survivor was there. Because the killer, the Xenomorph, has to make the choice: do I chase the rest of this chase as an M1 killer, a 150 M1 killer, Andy, or do I deal with this turret and then you get 3-4 seconds of extra distance, which will make a pallet, which will make a window. The complete misunderstanding of what turrets are for, and then the chosen ignorance, the willful ignorance to not learn what the turrets are for, it really is a skill issue. It really is a skill issue. It is the biggest, like, collective, like, nope, I'm not going to learn, but I'm sure going to complain and whine and bitch anyway that I have seen in this community in an incredibly long time. Incredibly long time. Like, that, it is literally, like, it took me, what, like 10 seconds to explain to you what turrets are actually for? 10 seconds. Can't do that. Impossible. Too much of an ask. Too big of an ask. Fucking stupid, dude. It's okay to hate things in the game, to hate certain killers, but if it's something that you could resolve or you could do better with, and it only takes like what, 10 seconds, 10 to 10 seconds, a little spiel, 10-15 seconds of me saying something to uncover something you can do better, and you're not even willing to do that, like, come on, brother. Come on. Like, that's on you at that point. Don't say it like it's objective. Don't say it's like it's objectively like, this is objectively a problem. Like, no, it's not objectively a problem. You're just stupid. Okay, you're not stupid, but you're acting stupid. Whatever.
Let's not also forget to mention what they did to my girl Sadako. They took a very specific playstyle that
Sadako
she had,
fan.
condemned Sadako, and made it base kit in the most brainless way imaginable.
And
really. Lastly, we have Chucky, who by comparison to all others isn't nearly as bad, but his scamper into dash ability again pretty much robs survivors of meaningful counterplay. Keep in mind, this video has nothing to do with the killer versus survivor balance argument. It's about the cascade of problems brought on by terrible map design. Bad map design early on robbed OG M1 killers of meaningful gameplay at loop. So what is the result of all of this? Well, ironically, in a desperate attempt to create strong killers that could win on horribly designed maps, behavior has now inadvertently made them so strong that survivors have no legitimate counterplay, with one huge exception: rushing gens as fast as possible. Because the only counterplay
I was gonna make a that was gonna be in that video I was gonna talk about. This funny we're watching this, and I literally have the notepad for it over here. Is that like part of that single player gameplay thing is like there's so many characters like Chucky, Trickster. Buff Trickster likes this too, where the only way you win against these players, against these characters, is to just hope that the rest of your team is efficient enough on gens that they can push out enough gens for the complete lack of gameplay happening on the other side with your chase. You just gotta pray that your team is pushing out gens. That is the counterplay to these killers. There is no dodge here, there is no hug a taller object, there is no bait the swing. It is just hope that by the time your chase ends in a short amount of time, despite nothing you did wrong, that there's enough gen pressure on the map to beat them. And that is the design. And it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I have to play a more fun killer. Somebody told me that the other day too, Zombie. I mean, I just need to play a more fun killer, and I'm like,
to anti-gameplay killer design is gluing to gens like your life is dependent on it. That means broken toolboxes, syringes, and basically anything that buys survivors time and increases gen speed. Anti-loop meant killers had a chance to hit survivors. With anti-gameplay, it's much more beneficial for survivors to just hold W to a part of the map that's as far away from generators as possible. Trying to loop a killer that can't be looped is too risky. The philosophy has become if 1 or 2 gens aren't finished by the time the killer gets their first down, that means the game is over because the survivors aren't pushing gens hard enough. Now, I know the big counter argument here is going to be that survivors always rush gens anyway, which is true. But it was not this extreme. I'd even call it a rare experience if we were being truly honest. Survivors had choices. They could make mistakes, go for saves, try to bully the killer, etc. Now, any of that is considered throwing the game. Gens have become the religion. Skill expression has become hitting hyper-focused skill checks. Same with tunneling at 5 gens. It always existed, but now it's like every 2 out of 3 games.
I have tunneled more in the past year of gameplay than I ever have in the history of playing this game. Because in most cases, I literally have to. I literally have to. Because if I don't, all the gens are done. And they all get out. I don't even get a 1K. Like, literally, like, I feel so... I do not feel good about it. But I've had a tunnel more in the past year of gameplay than I ever have. Like, it is disgusting.
Which wouldn't even be the biggest deal if the killers weren't so incredibly lethal. For instance, what do you do if you are being tunneled by a xenomorph? You can't just pull turrets out of your juice mid-tunnel, and your teammates are legitimately better off rushing gens than trying to help you. So now we...
Well, I mean, like, if you this is up to you, like, if you were to solo queue, if you were, like, in, like, a 4-man. If you're in a 4-man, you know, they body block for you and they run you through turrets, then yes. But, like, obviously, if you're not in a 4-man, you gotta just, you know, hope they've put some down, which is a problem a lot of killers have, like Pinhead and stuff like that, but not necessarily that black and white.
We have a situation where killers are having a bad experience because gens are flying insanely fast, no matter how short their chases are, which feels completely unfair.
Appreciate it.
And survivors are having a bad experience because the entire gameplay loop is a generator repair speedrun simulator. Throw in skill-based matchmaking, pushing the metagame to the absolute extreme, killers running powerful slowdowns nearly every game, which again, wouldn't even be such a problem if it wasn't for the lethality of the killer design. Freddy getting 50% gen regression from one hook isn't nearly the same thing as a nurse getting it. Then on the other side, survivors running windows, gen speed perks, and exhaustion perks.
I still don't get how windows is like a bad perk to run in terms of like being super sweaty. Like, I get it kind of makes people just like W pre-drop, but like it's still up to how you use it and not necessarily like the perk itself does anything or does too much. Helps you avoid dead zones, which is really nice. But if you're, you know, in a 3 or 4 man, they're calling that out anyway. I still don't get the Windows boogeyman conversation. I'm really, really glad that behavior is not listened to people treating windows of opportunity like a big boogeyman, because like I still don't get how it's like super terrible and needs to be nerfed immediately. Like, I don't know.
Maximize their shift W value. It also doesn't help that behavior keeps adding movement speed based.
Yeah, but I would argue, Sawyer, that if they're good enough that they can loop you for a long time, isn't that a good thing that they have a perk that's good that helps them chase more, because chase is the most fun part of the game?
And add-ons that really make maps feel even worse than they already are. The ultimate outcome of all of this is a game where every match feels the same and it's boring, all because behavior refused to address DBD's biggest flaw since the very beginning and kept doubling down or finding easier alternatives to get around the map design issues rather than addressing them directly. No matter how much the community complained, behavior always knew better. It's the same thing with skill-based matchmaking. The entire DBD community basically begged for it not to be added to the game, and it was anyway.
The way they've doubled down on skill-based matchmaking is really wild, considering how much like people just universally hate it. Like, the way that people universally dislike skill-based matchmaking, it's absolutely wild that they chose to keep it. Like, there is nothing that the DBD community agrees on. Like, we all hate each other's takes. But the only thing The only thing that we seem to universally agree on is hex skill-based matchmaking. But they kept it. Hey, Leas, we just watched one of your watched your video on the cross progression thing before we got to this one. It was very, very good. You did a very good job. They nerf Windows? Yeah, there's no reason to nerf Windows. But I don't understand how they kept skill-based matchmaking after it was so universally disliked. So universally disliked. Like, that's wild to me. Good number of people? I would like to find those people, Ashen One. I have not heard a single person say they're down for skill-based matchmaking. Like, literally one. I have not seen one person in any sphere of the community that said that. Doing dishes? Don't splash on me. I'm already clean. I don't need any washing. Thank you. You're down? Okay, there's one person. I found one. You liked it when you raised the soft cap? Okay. They were in my community the whole time. It was you guys. They were among us. Yeah, I don't think anybody enjoys skill-based matchmaking in this game. Yeah, well, when you start making terrible content, you won't get shouted out. Did you ever think about that? Make your content terrible and you won't get shouted out for it. Entirely, the ball is in your court.
It's been years and it's still terrible for the game, and like Coconut RTS said recently, the longer SBMM is in the game, the more permanent, irreversible damage it does to the DBD player base. The more sweaty the community becomes, the more difficult it will be to ever undo that sweaty mindset. SBMM takes core issues like bad map design, for example, and just pushes them to the max. Every flaw in design is exploited by the player base in a game with SBMM. As I'm recording this, the new PTB just dropped, so it will take some time for the community to test everything, but I sincerely hope that behavior didn't find a way to make Hillbilly into an anti-gameplay killer. I also hope they don't somehow manage to make Ormond a more unfair survivor-sided map than it already is, but after 3 failed attempts to fix Skull Merchant, I'm very skeptical of these things.
I think Ormond's main problem is with its main building. Like, when I was playing on the PTB, it didn't seem like too different because they didn't really adjust the main thing that was like weird. It was like I think it was Twistier. I was like, what did they even do to Garden of Choy? Because like they didn't adjust the main problem, which was like the main building. They did adjust the main building, but not in a way that actually helped. So it was like the same thing with Ormond. It's like they didn't touch the main building, which is kind of like the biggest problem is that the main building is huge, takes up so much of the map, and it's really, really good. Like, they didn't touch that, so it's like, I didn't even notice.
That said, as a Sadako main, I will say that the Sadako changes sound very promising on paper and closer to the buffs I originally asked for when the character released. Lastly, there's finally some add-on reworks coming for Blight, but just by reading the patch notes, I'm pretty sure it's going to fix nothing. We'll see what the live update brings, I guess. I'm sure you can all let me know how the PTB was received down in the comments. In the end though, if behavior is unwilling to accept certain things, like how their desperation to work around terrible map design has caused so many cascading problems, or how skill-based matchmaking has utterly failed and is literally ruining the game.
Yeah, if you look at like the numbers of Dead by Daylight, the poignant place where it does stop dropping is when skill-based matchmaking is introduced. That is where people start leaving the game, like objectively. Like, no matter how you feel about it, gloomer or doomer, like, that is where people start getting upset, and that's where you start seeing the player count drop. Like, it ebbs and flows way more than content creators want you to believe, because that doesn't fit the narrative that the game is dying. But, like, collectively, that's where we start seeing more negative months, is right after that happened.
Then this truly could be the beginning of the end for DBD. Remember, I don't want to be too dramatic, but big license...
You don't want to be too dramatic? That's like what your videos do. Like you have either super informative videos, which are really great and wonderful, or it's like I will never forget the TCM video where it was just kind of like blaming everyone else except the game or Gun Media for like the way that the game's like collision course was going. I would love to see Choy do like a video again about their thoughts about TCM and how it turned out, because I remember that video and I remember very poignantly just kind of blaming everyone except the game and the developers for the problems and the dissatisfaction with the game. And Yeah, that was kind of dramatic to be like, no, it's all you. There's no problems here in Ba Sing Se. There are no problems in Ba Sing Se. And then, well, look what happened now.
I think we did a pretty good job so far.
So, I don't know. I would be interested to see like the updated takes on that, because clearly that's not what happened. My cabbages! You know what's funny? They got the original voice actor to do the live action portrayal in the upcoming movie, which is really cool. Yeah, I hope all game modes are bringing people back, or just like more custom game, you know, flexibility. A lot more people play like very casually, if that was the case.
Licenses are no longer carrying the game like they used to. People are not having fun. New perks, awesome new cosmetics, iconic killers, iconic survivors, great events, all of it is just wasted on the current state of the game. Normal, everyday players.
Is it wasted? Because I'm having the time of my life. I literally found I have not mained a character. Even when I mained Billy and I mained Huntress, I still played like 2 games of Huntress and then another character, 2 games of Billy and then another character. Like, I have not been like glued to a character. Like, I played 3 games of other killers today, period. Like in the entire stream. Like, I am on that Xeno life. I am on that Xeno life. So, I don't know, I'm good.
Are having miserable experiences regardless of what side they play, and DBD content creators are starting to branch out to new games. The behavior can keep adding new content, but if players are associating DBD with stress, frustration, and negative,
I believe the number was 16 meters, if I remember correctly. You guys having that conversation. It's like 16 meters of a television, and there's also add-ons that increase it. Oh, yeah.
Then the juice is just no longer worth the squeeze. I really do hope behavior strives to make DBD fun again in 2024 as their primary goal. I have a few ideas on how they can do that, but now I want your opinions. Are there any other reasons you all feel like these recent massive licenses have failed, or why players don't seem like they want to come back to DBD? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, as it massively helps out the channel, or dislike the video if you're a Skull Merchant main who runs RPD offerings every match. And as always, thanks for watching, and
I think it's and this is gonna be like a complete aside. I do like Choy's content because it is so like either like super informative or super like there's a super biased take happening. But I don't know, it's just interesting, and I do want to point this out. It's just interesting that like with TCM and like Gun Media's game, there was so much like forgiveness and an ask for patience on a part of the player base and the community. But when it comes to DBD, like Choy is like a very like what is a good comparison? Like a reporter trying to get the scoop, right, to try and like expose the company, you know? It's very like aggressive, and behavior is doing all wrong, you know? And it's just like the flip of the switch with that. It just, like I was saying earlier with like all the way back here with like the RPD take, it's like RPD is objectively worse than the old version. And it's like, you say stuff like that, it just kind of like makes your credibility really like hard to follow, I think. It makes the credibility really hard to follow and really hard to like stick to, you know? And I just don't, and you're not the first or last person that will do this. Like I said, there's plenty of DBD content creators. They're like every single time, like there's a new ASIM on the block, they're like, bro, I'm leaving. This is for real this time. I'm never coming back. And then they come back in 3 months. That's a thing that happens a lot. But I just wish it was more consistent. See a lot more generosity towards TCM rather than DBD. Yeah, it was like with TCM, it's like we need to be nicer to it so it actually like lives and survives, even though it's doing a lot of the same things and committing a lot of the same issues as Dead by Daylight, if not worse. A lot of ways it's definitely worse. But with DBD, it's like they need to just be taken out behind the woodshed and just like really grinded for their mistakes. And it's like, I just wish there was a consistency here, like a fair treatment on both sides. You know, that was like, okay, well, there's some stuff they do fine, and there's a lot of stuff that they do bad, which is the realistic. That is what's really happening, is that there's a lot of good in TCM, which is why we don't want it to die. But there's a lot of stuff that's bad that they need to actually have that harsh criticism so the game can continue. But when you're super openly biased about it. It's just like, it's hard to take those changes seriously. Yeah, but on the flip side is that like, with that point zombie, is that like TCM was made by their own admission in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it was like, it was made to be a better ASIM than DBD. It was made to be the casual fun alternative to something like Dead by Daylight. So the fact that they are screwing up this early into their life cycle when they, you know, supposedly were trying their hardest to make an opposing situation, and now we're falling into a lot of the same pitfalls. Like, I feel like that's, yeah, I feel like that is just as bad. Well, they're gonna do, that's kind of like a runaway train. They're never gonna not do that. Because like Coconut was talking about in their video, it's like, that's how they make investors happy, and that's how they draw more eyes onto the game, is by that Smash Brothers nature of IPs and licenses. So they're always going to do that. That's something that I don't think we can negotiate or get away from. They already said in their blah blah blah. Their recent Reddit Ask Me Anything that there are no plans for a health patch. So this is kind of just what we're dealing with, I suppose. Did they actually say that? Yep. They said they have no plans for a health patch. That is not coming. At least not currently. So there's my hope. Yep. Is it? Oh yeah, you're right, because that's the previous generation. I forgot that like only newer generations have cosplay. You're correct. You are correct about that. I forgot that was even a thing. I do agree that DBD map design has not had a general philosophy for quite some time, and that does air itself to a lot of issues in Dead by Daylight. It's all connected together. I think in general the map design has been better than before, like over time. I remember double pallets, like triple pallet spawns, even gone windows on a ton of maps. I think in general we are moving towards like a better position, but there is a lot of trouble still. I think it's kind of just like the weird place that we all sit with Dead by Daylight, is like they are, for the most part, changes are moving in a positive direction. It's just not as like stark as we would like it to be. Like something like Stark would be like an example like Hillbilly. Like they just said, screw Overheat. I know you've hated Overheat forever. Bam. Overdrive. Overheat is good now. You're welcome. Right? Like something stark like that. We're like, wow, thank you. You know, like that. We don't have a lot of that. We have more like really, really slow progress that's like barely noticeable. Like, you know, Old Haddonfield not being possible anymore. Like a map like that is not going to happen in modern DBD, which I am thankful for. So you don't notice those positive changes because they are much slower, and they're much less impactful over something really flashy, like just fixing Billy entirely and making him amazing. Right? And it's what makes like a lot of this stuff that's really negative like really stand out more, because it's kind of like permeating, kind of like it's stinking more because it's been left out for a while. But I think in general the game is still kind of going towards a more positive direction, and has been. But the way we keep doing that is by continuing to push them to make positive changes for the game and things that are healthy. But also be a little bit more mindful about like doomsaying a little too much and freaking out, because we're definitely not in the situation we were like 4 years ago with the game, or even 3 years ago with the game. Things have improved a lot. You know, I would much rather take the behavior design team now that like will listen to the fact that Sadako is not fun and try to change them over and over again, even if they're not getting it right away. Rather than behavior they're just like, oh yeah, that character's not fun, we'll fix it in like 4 years, I guess. Like I don't necessarily want to scare them away, because I would much rather have modern day DBD design and their enthusiasm to change things than what we have had previously. Yeah, DBD is the healthiest it's ever been, despite issues. Like you can't tell me like old DS Unbreakable Dead Hard was like fair and wonderful meta design, or that like having like 4 pallets be able to spawn into each other into an LLT wall into Shack was like healthy game design. Like you can't tell me that. That's not, those are mistakes that they would never ever make again, you know. And I'm thankful for those things. But guys, back, welcome back, Tyre. Welcome back, friend. Yeah, I'm thankful for those things. So generally, things are healthier than they've ever been. It's just not as flashy as something really, really cool like Overdrive Billy. Yeah.